This KING-KAMBUF, 100 proof, bringing you nothing but the truth. We back on this architecture, programming, planning, and practice. This is lesson 3. Programming and space needs. The introduction. Buildings have become increasingly complex and costly, and they must be carefully designed in order to function properly. Occasionally, some building spaces may be underused or even unused. Expensive equipment may only be operated immediately, and expected traffic patterns may not materialize, or may have to be altered. A functional building requires skillful design, which must have sensible programming in its foundations. A building's needs must be described completely and systematically before design can begin. This process, known as building programming, is one of the most significant steps in achieving a design success. Programming purpose. Architectural programming is the process of identification of systematic organizations of functional architectural, structural, mechanical, aesthetics, and budget criteria that guides decision making in the design of buildings. Good programming can be achieved through a well-structured process and a comprehensive framework at best. The design information that framework must allow all information and ideas to be expressed about, including alternative means for achieving desired objectives. The programming process seeks to illuminate the uniqueness of the particular problem. All program techniques are basically similar regardless of the building type, size, or location. Computers can be very useful for programming complex projects, and the great amount of data are collected. An advantage of the computer uses steeped and handling information in an orderly and a logical way. The central purpose of programming is to identify and understand the nature of the problem associated with a particular facility. It is essential to obtain a thorough knowledge of the building type being programmed. This can be achieved throughout research, visits to similar facilities, and interviews. The program writer must concentrate on seeking the problems, not solutions. This day, it may be also helpful in this earliest phase of work to engage specialized consultants. It is particularly important that the owner and the architect each designate one's responsibilities to it, representatives with complete authority to coordinate communications and make policy decisions. That often leads to the formation of a team consisting of the owner, architect, and consultants. We see these representatives, users of purpose or felicity. The team efforts requires a clear communication system. Since all concepts may be thoroughly understood by concerning parties, specific space requirements should be considered in the context of the program. The total program for the purpose of the diagram and other illustrative graphics can be greatly aided. Programming processes. Program is often performed in 3 phases. In the first phase, broad objectives are stated. In the second phase, functional requirements are described by size and relationships, and in the third phase, the detailed requirements are noted. Programs should be done independently of architectural designs. We see one should not attempt to design a building or anticipate a design solution while programming. The reason is that the program might have a compromise or biases in. However, it may be helpful when the program is complete to do a test of the concept of the program Z and to involve the developments of the simple mass and circulation, design, and relationship to the site to test the reasonabilities in the program within itself and the relationships to the site. Okay, it's effective for formatting, organizing, programmatic for information is the division of that for information to function and form, economy and time, functional considerations, objectives, methods, and achieving them and human needs. Form considers the site, the characteristics indeed, and the physical environment, spatial aspects, and paternity structure aspects, economies, considers the construction budget and well as long-term operating costs. Time considers the schedule for the design, construction, and occupancy. The final program should be concluded in statements and provided a problem which is extended to be solved through the design process. Of all effective programming requires facts, the exercise of reason and objectivity. Each phase in each program can be undertaken through a 5-step method as follows: establishing objectives, collecting, organize, analyze data, formulate relationships, establish priorities, state the problem. The objective of the programming effort is full of statements and the project requirements. Programming is the process of problem seeking while designing is problem solving. A further discussion of the 5 problem steps each follow establish objective sweeps. Each owner may often describe project goals in terms of the program, the site, the budget, sustainable design factors, and elements of time. The information should be collected and documented with care. It should be reviewed by the client and prevented misunderstood to clarify ambiguous concepts and to allow the client and the opportunity to conform, reconsider, or modify in his intentions on. The program writer must also identify and resolve areas of potential conflict. 2. Collect, organize, and analyze facts. Facts must be organized and analyzed before their meaning. The relative importance can be determined. It is essential to discriminate between potential facts and non-essential details. Otherwise, details may become overwhelming and discerning. A variety of factual information is necessary. For the example, the number of occupancies or users and their activities initially and in the future. And in addition, the programmer must determine the characteristics of spaces and the relationships to the other spaces, sites, dates. It must be collected, organized, and analyzed. Science and site influences forms by the physical and legal characteristics, other constraints that affect the project, and that must be analyzed, including building codes, zoning ordinances, and the project budgets, construction costs, and all other expenses and project developments. Formulate relationships. Functional relationships are established through the use of schematic diagrams, which should be misconstrued as schematic designs. For example, the organization, conceptual, and correctional facilities may involve an academy plan in which individual clusters and facilities are limited to a certain number of inmates. The number of inmates is a fact. where the plan of the individual cluster is a concept expressed in a functional relationship. One depends on explaining the other. At this point, it may be helpful to evaluate such concepts, and the example of an idea would be determined which the services should centralize. If then decentralized services such as libraries, administration, dining, and recreation have marked effect on the institution, social organization, administration, and management. Other concepts that may be tested included integration, compartmentalization, expandability, convertibility. So, most important, however, is the investigation of concepts derived from the physical, social, and psychological characteristics of those for whom the facility is designed for. Establish priorities. One of the most important tasks is the balancing of programming spaces with the budget. Unless the program space requires a realistic relative to the available construction funds, the architect will be burdened with the unattended programming. If the modifications to the programmers are found to be necessary because the budget restrictions, they should be made at the time. The construction cost of the square foot basis should be established by establishing based on experiences of the most recent data. Available alliances should be made from the reasonable of building efficiencies and the ratios of net usable and gross building areas. State the problem, son. After evaluating the information derived from the first 4 steps, the problem should be stated. This stated may concerning the program, this site, the budget, the schedule of all which are on the premises for design should be expressed concisely. Otherwise, it may be misinterpreted as detailed design instructions. This statement should be expressed in terms of functions, areas, and relationships. It should also be sufficiently broad so as not to suggest specific architectural designs or to limit the possible range of those designs. The program process. Process number 1, establish the objectives, son. Primary, secondary, tertiary. Process number 2, collection of data, site costs, spatial standards, prototypes, systems. Process number 3, formulate relationships, elements, components, subgroups, interrelationships. Process number 4, establish priorities, primary functions, secondary, servant functions, locational priorities, circulation priorities. Process number 5, program statements. You see, review and refine draft statements, proof of concept, analyze of draft final statements. These steps outline the basic development of an architectural program. An analytical procedure must be employed throughout each of the 5 steps so that the programmer can help the program to reach essential decisions. The architect also helps the owner recognize and analyze the key determinants of the design. To repeat, programming therefore is the process of problem seeking. There are a design in the process of problem solving, that therefore analyzing the specific needs, inevitable results of buildings which are more responsive to the requirements of the users. The value of good program is manifold. It clarifies the intentions of the owners, the users, and the architects. Therefore, design begins. It reduces the necessity of changes during the final design, developments of discussion, contracts, and divines, and documents of construction. It provides a basis for the resolution of differences of opinions and also serves as a reference upon which future changes can be based. Finally, good programming minimizes changes necessitated by waste, space, unnecessary equipment, and poorly relationships between component parts. Help from the owner recognizes and analyzes the key determinants of the design. To repeat programming, therefore, is the process of problem seeking, whereas design is the process of problem solving. The purpose of this design is to describe the programming process. However, no description will be complete without the following particularifications, qualifications, no building regardless of how careful it is intendedly used, may be researched, analyzed, and predicted, so will be used precisely as planned. School curriculums are often modified, hospital functions are frequently reorganized, and the operations of the companies occasionally change. Thus, because in programming and design it is wise to provide a possible change, this may mean design with a loose fit, providing space that can be reconfigured to need change, or it may mean planning 10 to 20% additional space and an expansion. In some cases, those spaces that are likely to require modification should be identified and designed in a way that would facilitate change. A modular layout among the most useful planning devices for achieving this flexibility. For the reason it is utilization may be suggested as a part of programming statements. The anticipation of the change does not evaluate the need for precisions and programming, rather it puts the programming process into realistic perspective. Programming outline formats and outline formats are prepared in order to organize programmatic data. These formats help to summarize basic project needs, and the information recorded is subsequently used and guided during the various design phases. Depending on the scope and complexity of the project, the criteria are developed in the descending order of magnitude as shown. Total building groups are concerned with all buildings that are constituted in a complex of buildings groups in the group of the project comprising a number of industry related facilities such as a civic center or a college campus or a new community. The first step should be to develop a master plan for each group to be an assembly. Among primary programming considerations are its shared elements such as the circulation of vehicles and pedestrians, parks and facilities, outdoor areas and service maintenance we see, and the fire protection is additional. There are basic organizational relationships to be accommodated on the site. A master plan describes the development of the site to be realized over a period of many years. It is important that the plan phase is clearly identified to allow for the incremental development. Component buildings refer to the function of any building single layouts, and the building total building group mentioned out above. The program should describe the objectives of the building activities and the relationships between the major activities, centers, and numbers and types and buildings to accommodate in the amount of space needed to serve. Objectives to the program should also describe requirements of access, ingress, egress, internal circulation, and possible expansion. Activity centers refers to the space of a series of spaces related to each another by function. An example is an X-ray site of a hospital, which is an active center composed of a number of individual spaces, including X-ray rooms, film storage rooms, viewing rooms, developing rooms, and dressing rooms. As a unit, an organization, an activity center, administration, and time limits and functional must be clear, be defined. For the program, it should be defined the administrative and functional relationships among the various activity centers in the component building, a list of personnel and with their responsibilities with accompanying the space needs of each activity center. Space units include the name of the space, area, and net are assigned square feet, numbers, the people occupying it. It describes the activities performed in the space and the relationship between it and the other related spaces. Special requirements can also be described, including those related to structures and utility environments and equipment. Further levels of programming may include a list of movable and furnishings. A complete program outlines format should be received, reviewed, and approved by the owner and the architect, and become part of the project record and used for subsequent phases of development. Technical bulletins and catalog sheets and special equipment to be incorporated can be attached in order to facilitate the placement of the elements and during the design development phases. The practice of the also to be helpful in the prepared cost estimates of such equipment is neither otherwise apparent. An example of the typical project program is shown at the conclusion of the lesson. Determine space needs. Effective programming depends on the ability to perceive basic space requirements and conventional standards of differential types of uses. It also requires the understanding of relationships between the assignable and the gross building area, the standard of assignable net area. The various uses should be established during the programming phases in order to determine the overall sizes of the program. The project, it should be emphasized this individual space not designed during the phase. Therefore, the dimension configures the proportions are derived in the well unit of the design phase. As an example of the employing space standards in the program, working with the owner determines the net area requirements for the seats and a certain number of people of the employees. Dining rooms normal standards indicates that dining functions can be accommodated in 15 to 17 square feet each person. This requires a base of the amount of floor area required for one person seating at the table shared by other persons. It is also included that persons share the floor area for circulation. Therefore, it is one program size of the employee dining room seats 100 persons. He or she would allocate an area of about 15 net square feet, 100 square feet for the dining space. The internal circulation needs to be net area, however, does not include the area required to circulate between other spaces of the building or area needed to serve the spaces. Those areas constitute part of the overall building gross area. Consequently, a calculation gross building area, the employee's dining room may require an additional 25 or 50% of the net area for the general service and circulation. That exact amount varies, but a normal includes the circulation, service, toilet, mechanical, electrical, and custodial spaces. The amount of floor area required for services and circulation depends on the type of complexity of the building. For example, buildings whose interior is composed of many large open spaces, such as the industrial shop. Buildings require less circulation space, is therefore more efficient in administration. Office building whose interior is partitioned into numerous small offices, conference rooms, and secretarial spaces. Consequently, the ratio of the net to the gross area, referred to as the efficiency, increases to the complexity, and the number of desired spaces decrease. In general, the efficiency of the building ranges from 60 to 80%. Some institutions specify a certain ratio that is the prescribed minimum efficiency to be achieved, such as constraining. These become an integral part of programming, exerts of strong influence on the building design. To calculate the efficiency of the building, the net area is divided by the gross area. The net area is the sum of the all usable floor space measured to the inside face of the enclosing walls, or the lines of the other spaces separations, but it does not include circulation. The general service areas such as corridors, lobbies, restrooms, custodial rooms, mechanical spaces. The building area, on the other hand, is the sum of all buildings areas measured to the exterior faces. All perimeter walls, including exterior walls, columns and shafts. The net area divided by the gross area and multiplied by 100 to express the efficiency as a percentage. To establish an estimate and required gross area of the building, given the net area the most, one divides the net area divided by the desired anticipated efficiency ratio. The result is the gross area of the building expressed in gross feet, square feet. The example of the building contained 100,000 gross square feet, yielding 65,000 net usable square feet, has an efficiency of 65%. That's 65,000 divided by 100,000 times 100 equals 65%. It's a ratio of net to gross area is 0.65. Stated another way, if a building requires 65,000 net square feet and it's specified to be 65% efficiency, the requirement gross square feet is 100,000. 65,000 divided by 0.65. There are several methods used to determine the appropriate approximate square foot floor areas required for various building types. These can be divided into three main categories at night. Those in which determine the amount of square space which the living and the work environment race. Those in which the objective determines the amount of space occupied, such as a car in a parking garage. Those in which the specified activities as governed by the certain practice or rule of, such as those games and handing of specific courts. Criteria have also been developed for various types. Criteria have also been developed for various types of occupants based on the desired level of comfort and or status. For example, executives and clerks may perform similar physical tasks. However, the executive's office is generally larger because it is more comfortable and designates greater status. In addition, minimal standards have established and ensured adequate capacity and a safe egress for a space egress by the numbers of people. We see the standards are the base of the numbers of the square feet of the usable floor area per occupant, and these figures are normal, especially in the building code. Space specific standards not only describe the number of occupants and can be safely housed in the space, but also the numbers of widths and exits requirements. The vacance of space during the emergency shown as the approximate square foot of the area persons required for the selected uses of the should be offered in general understanding of basic space needs. Estimated space needs. Oh man, I think we're gonna have to call this is the wrong chapter, so we're not gonna get through all this right now. We're gonna call this good and come back halfway through and finish it up. This is KING-KAMBUF, 100 proof, bringing you nothing but the truth. And we deep dived into some architecture here. architecture. Estimating space needs when we return. Amen. KING-KAMBUF. 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 The KING-KAMBUF. 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 The nation of 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 KING-KAMBUF. KING-KAMBUF. The nation of